Welcome to the deep dive. We've got this really fascinating collection of sources you sent over, all focused on mapping our internal psychological landscapes.
That's right. We're talking about inner conflict, how we regulate ourselves, those unconscious patterns that seem to run the show sometimes.
Yeah, and our mission today really is to dig into that. We want to extract the actual mechanisms our minds use to deal with all this inherent tension.
Exactly. That feeling of being pulled in different directions, the drive for consistency versus, our actions, the pull of these deep patterns, even just the difficulty of relating to other people.
We're aiming for frameworks here, frameworks for, well, radical self-awareness, really, moving beyond just reacting.
hmm And a great place to start is probably the most fundamental conflict, cognitive dissonance, Leon Festinger's big idea.
Right, that feeling you get when you hold two contradictory ideas or your actions just don't line up with what you believe. Our brains really, really want consistency.
They crave it. It's like an internal operating principle. We strive for consistency across our beliefs, opinions, our behaviors.
And when that breaks.
That's dissonance. And Festinger said it causes this psychological discomfort. It's not just a thought. It feels bad. It's actually a motivational state.
Meaning it pushes us to do something about it.
Yes. We're almost biologically compelled to resolve it.
Yeah.
Sometimes even if that means, bending reality a bit.
The classic example always seems to be the smoker. They know smoking is bad for them, that's one cognition, but they smoke anyway. That's the conflicting behavior or cognition about the behavior.
Right. And the key insight from Festinger is that the intensity of that bad feeling, that discomfort, isn't trivial. It links directly to how important the contradicted belief is to you.
So if health is a really high priority for that smoker,
Then the dissonance is going to be intense, especially if they also see themselves as like a rational person making good choices. The conflict hits harder.
but if they're more, I don't know, fatalistic about it, gotta die sometime.
Much lower dissonance. The internal stakes are just different based on their values and self-perception.
Okay, so the importance of the belief is one factor dialing up the intensity. What else makes that inner conflict feel, well, almost unbearable sometimes?
Well, there are a few key amplifiers. First, the significance of the decision itself.
Makes sense.
Buying a coffee. Probably not much dissonance. But deciding to, say, quit your job and move across the country, that's huge. High commitment, lasting consequences. Massive potential for dissonance.
The weight of the choice ramps up the internal debate. Okay, what's number two?
Second is the attractiveness of the alternative you didn't choose.
Ah, the what ifs.
Exactly. Let's say you picked Job A, but Job B was also really appealing. Maybe it offered, I don't know, more freedom or a better commute. Even after you choose A, those good things about B keep nagging at you, increasing the dissonance.
I made the right choice, but maybe.
Right. Makes you question it. That's why sometimes choosing between two really good options feels awful. It guarantees some level of dissonance about the rejected one.
The ghost of the perfect alternative brings us right back to things like buyer's remorse.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the third factor, this one's really interesting, is having low cognitive overlap between the conflicting ideas.
Low cognitive overlap. Okay, unpack that for us. What does that mean in practice?
It means the two competing thoughts, or the thought and the behavior, share very few common ground points or ways to easily rationalize them together.
So like choosing between two similar cars, high overlap.
The high overlap, you can easily say, well, this one has slightly better mileage and I value that more. You can find common ground, compare features. But imagine the cognitions are, one, climate change is an existential threat, and two, my job requires me to fly multiple times a week.
Ooh, very little overlap there.
Extremely low overlap. It's incredibly hard to hold those two simultaneously without feeling intense discomfort. It forces you into a quick, often kind of irrational strategy to reduce that tension.
Okay, so the psychological pain is so bad, we're driven to fix it fast and often unconsciously. How do we do that? What are these dissonance reduction strategies?
Well, the most common one is just changing how we perceive the alternatives after the fact.
Right.
Since you can't undo the choice easily,
Right.
you start unconsciously emphasizing all the good things about what you did choose. That little scratch on the car you bought. Suddenly it has character.
Huh. Yes. And the thing you didn't choose.
You minimize its positives. You start finding flaws you didn't notice before, or deciding those benefits weren't that important anyway. You basically rewrite the narrative until the tension eases off. Rationalization.
And we also get really good at filtering information, don't we? Controlling what we even let in.
Oh yeah, that's selective seeking or selective exposure. We actively avoid information that could increase our dissonance.
So if you just bought stock in Company X.
You might conveniently ignore that negative news report about their sector. Or you'll seek out articles saying what a great investment it is. It's why filter bubbles and echo chambers are so powerful. They're partly fueled by this need to avoid dissonance.
You surround yourself with confirmation.
Exactly. Which leads straight into the social dimension of this. We don't just do this inside our own heads. We use our social groups.
How so?
Our friends, our communities, they become huge resources for reducing dissonance. We talk to people who are likely to agree with us, to confirm our choices.
See? Dave agrees it was a smart move to buy that car.
Precisely. The conversation itself reinforces your chosen belief or decision. If everyone around you validates your choice, your dissonance drops, even if objective facts haven't changed. We use relationships like a mirror.
But one we keep polishing to show us what we want to see.
You got it. It's pretty profound when you think about it. This basic need for internal consistency shapes not just what we believe, but who we talk to, what news we consume, what we're even willing to hear.
Wow. Okay, so our minds hate inconsistency. But what of the flip side? How do our consistent behaviors, our habits, our automatic actions actually get formed? Let's shift gears a bit.
Yeah, moving from managing conflict to understanding the engine of behavior itself, automaticity, predisposition. So much of what we do is patterned, right?
Yeah.
The decision is often made before we're consciously aware of it.
There's a great definition from behavior scientist Jason Hriha. He calls habits, reliable solutions to recurring problems in our environment.
That's a fantastic way to put it. They're not just boring routines. They're efficient mental shortcuts. They evolved because they worked.
It's about efficiency, isn't it? The brain can't possibly deliberate every single action, how to tie your shoes, drive to work.
Exactly. It uses that feedback loop.
Yeah.
You try something, maybe it fails, you learn, you try differently. And the actions that work, that solve the problem reliably, get reinforced. They become automated.
Which frees up our conscious mind for harder stuff.
Right. But the problem comes when those once reliable solutions become, well, maladaptive, outdated.
Like maybe stress eating reliably solved boredom or anxiety when you were a kid.
But now it's causing health problems. The automated solution is now the problem itself.
So if we want to consciously change these automatic pilot programs, we need a way to engineer new ones or break old ones.
And that's where someone like James Clear comes in, with his 4 laws of behavior change. It's a really practical model.
He breaks down behavior into that loop: cue, craving, response, reward.
And argues that to change a habit, build a good one, break a bad one, you need to systematically manipulate those elements using 4 laws. Can you remember them?
Let's see. Make it obvious, that's the cue.
Yep.
Make it attractive, that's the craving.
Right.
Make it easy, the response.
Crucial one.
And make it satisfying, the reward.
You got it. So if you want to build an exercise habit, you make it obvious. Maybe leave your workout clothes by the bed.
Or if you want to say reduce screen time, you make it invisible, put the phone in another room, attack the cue.
Exactly. And make it easy is maybe the most important. Like you said, people often fail because they aim too high.
Right. Instead of run a marathon, it's put on running shoes. Or instead of write a book, it's write one sentence.
Yes. Reduce the friction. Make the first step ridiculously easy. The system works because it leans into how our brains are already wired. We naturally seek the path of least resistance.
Okay, this makes sense for changing habits, but it leads to a bigger, maybe deeper question. Where do these powerful patterns, these predispositions, actually come from in the first place? Is it all environment, or are we born with some kind of structure?
The age-old nature versus nurture debate applied to our psychological patterns. We've got sources pointing in both directions.
Let's start with the strong environmentalist view. B.F. Skinner is the classic example here.
Yeah, Skinner basically argued that the whole idea of an autonomous agent, an inner self making free choices, is kind of an illusion. He believed behavior is shaped almost entirely by the environment.
Stimulus, response, reinforcement, that's the loop.
Pretty much. Antecedent events trigger behavior, and the consequences determine if it happens again. Our inner life, our thoughts and feelings. Skinner saw those largely as byproducts of this external conditioning.
And he put a lot of emphasis on the role of punishment, right? Or rather, the avoidance of punishment.
A massive driver, according to Skinner. When some external authority, a parent, the state, whatever, imposes punishment, our primary reaction is to figure out how to avoid the circumstances that led to it.
Okay, but avoiding the punishment doesn't necessarily make the original impulse go away.
Exactly. And that's where it gets psychologically tricky. Avoiding the punishment often creates what Skinner called aversive internal conditions, basically internal anxiety, fear, maybe repressed anger, because you can't act on your natural drives without getting punished.
So you're stuck feeling bad inside to avoid feeling bad outside.
Right. And these internal bad feelings then fuel what Freud called neurotic dynamisms. These were essentially maladaptive coping mechanisms designed to dodge both the external punishment and the internal distress it caused.
Can you give some examples of these dynamisms beyond just like lashing out at someone else?
Sure. Think about rationalization. A parent might snap at their kid, not really because the kid did something that bad, but because the parent is stressed about work, which creates an internal aversive state. Then they rationalize the snapping as teaching discipline.
So the real motivation, easing their own stress, gets hidden.
Totally concealed, even from themselves sometimes. Or fantasizing. If you have aggressive urges you can't act on externally without punishment, you might play them out vividly in your head. It's a safe internal space.
Skinner's view really emphasizes the power of circumstance then. Change the environment, change the person.
That's the logical conclusion. If you could perfectly swap the conditioning histories of two different people, their behaviors and even personalities would theoretically swap too.
It's a powerful case for nurture, but then we have Carl Jung. And he takes a very different stance. He argues the psyche is not a blank slate at birth.
Definitely not. Jung believed the infant arrives with, as he put it, a tremendously complicated, sharply defined individual entity. It's partly inherited. And this innate structure contains the archetypes.
Okay, archetypes. These aren't just ideas people have, are they? They're more like blueprints.
Yeah, think of them as universal inherited patterns of instinctual behavior. They're like the fundamental organizing principles of the psyche. Things like the hero, the shadow, the animus, the great mother.
And Jung said these archetypes have real power. They attract, convince, fascinate, and overpower.
They're the primal stuff of revelation. When something in the world, a story, a symbol, a person, resonates deeply with us, Jung would say it's because it has activated an archetype within our own psyche.
So the mother archetype, for instance, it's not just about your actual mom.
Not at all. It shows up everywhere. Mother Earth, the concept of home, your homeland, the church, symbols of fertility like a garden or cornucopia, the longing for paradise.
It's a universal pattern related to origin, sustenance, protection.
Exactly. And Jung thought these archetypal structures are kind of built in. They give form to our experiences and instincts. They connect us to something deeper, maybe even universal. So, while Skinner highlights how the outside shapes us, Jung points to this incredibly rich internal structure we're born with.
Fascinating contrast. External conditioning versus innate blueprints. Okay, let's take these ideas, dissonance, habits, maybe these archetypes, and see how they show up where things often get really messy. Relationships.
Yes. The sources make it really clear that our internal conflicts, our unhealed stuff, inevitably gets exported into our relationships.
The relationship becomes a mirror.
A very accurate, sometimes painfully accurate mirror. That inner critic, the fear of being abandoned, those defended parts they manifest as defensiveness, maybe contempt, clinginess, control, you name it.
And one of the most common and often agonizing patterns is the dynamic that gets set up by insecure attachment styles. Specifically, the pairing of an anxious person with an avoidant person.
Oh, the anxious avoidant trap. Yes, it's a classic self-perpetuating cycle. It's brutal.
Explain that cycle. What's happening there?
Okay, so the person with an anxious attachment style typically needs a lot of reassurance, closeness, and consistency to feel safe. Any hint of distance triggers anxiety.
Okay.
The person with an avoidance style, on the other hand, feels smothered or trapped by too much closeness. They value independence and self-reliance, and intimacy can feel like a threat to their autonomy.
So you put them together.
And you get this push-pull dynamic. The avoidant partner feels engulfed and starts using what the researchers call deactivating strategies to create distance.
Deactivating strategies, what does that look like? It's not just outright leaving.
No, it's often much subtler. It's things like being vague about the future, focusing on small flaws in the partner, keeping secrets, prioritizing work or hobbies over the relationship constantly, avoiding physical closeness, or even just mentally checking out during conversations.
Anything to put some space back between them.
Exactly. It dials down the perceived threat of intimacy. But what effect does that have on the anxious partner?
It's like pouring gasoline on their anxiety fire. It confirms their fear of abandonment or inconsistency.
Precisely. It chronically activates their attachment system. This leads to two things: preoccupation, constantly thinking about the relationship, analyzing every little sign, and protest behavior.
Protest behavior, that doesn't sound like healthy communication.
It's usually not. It's a often counterproductive attempt to reestablish connection born out of anxiety. Things like excessive calling or texting, trying to make the partner jealous, withdrawing in silence, hoping they'll notice, threatening to leave but not meaning it.
Wow, it sounds exhausting for both people.
It is. The avoidant partner feels constantly managed or pressured, viewing even simple interactions as, quote, negotiations for space and independence.
Every conversation is about protecting their autonomy.
Pretty much. Closeness feels like suffocation to them. So when the anxious partner does try to show something vulnerable, seeking connection.
How does the avoidant typically react?
Often with dismissal, intellectualization, or minimizing. Things like, you're being too sensitive, or stop overthinking everything, or why make such a big deal out of it? It's rarely empathy. It's a defense mechanism to push the emotion away and regain that feeling of distance.
It really highlights how difficult it is when both partners are insecure. They're locked in this cycle, triggering each other's deepest fears, abandonment for one, engulfment for the other.
Yeah, they're seeking safety in opposite ways. One seeks it in closeness, the other in distance. Their core coping strategies are fundamentally at odds. It's why the cycle just keeps going round and round.
So, is there a way out? The sources mention the importance of a secure anchor.
Yes. A partner with a secure attachment style, someone who is comfortable with both intimacy and autonomy, can be a game changer. They offer consistency, reliability, and a calm nervous system.
That sounds ideal, but there's a catch, isn't there? For the anxious person especially.
That can be. Someone with an anxious attachment who is used to the emotional roller coaster, the push-pull, the drama, they might initially interpret the calmness and consistency of a secure partner as, well, boring, or even as a lack of attraction.
Because the anxiety isn't being constantly activated, they confuse that internal alarm bell with passion.
Exactly. That's a really crucial insight. We can mistake turbulence for love or intensity. It takes real self-awareness for someone anxious to recognize the value of stability and give that secure person a chance, even if it doesn't feel like the familiar fireworks initially.
It requires tolerating calm, basically. And for the avoidant, tolerating closeness, it forces growth.
It really does. Okay, so we talked about external shaping, internal patterns, relationship dynamics. This leads us to another major internal player, the inner critic, the judge. Freud's concept of the superego.
Ah, the superego, that internalized sense of authority, right? The voice that tells us what we should and shouldn't do.
Precisely. Freud argued it develops as we internalize the rules and prohibitions of external authorities, mainly our parents, but society too. Initially, we behave ourselves because we fear punishment from the outside specifically. We fear losing their love or approval.
Makes sense. Be good, get love, misbehave, risk losing it. Simple transaction.
But Freud said the transition to an internalized authority, the superego, makes things way more complicated and, frankly, kind of miserable.
How so? Once it's inside, isn't it just guiding us?
Not just guiding, judging, relentlessly. Because once the authority is internalized, renunciation is not enough. Simply not doing the forbidden thing doesn't satisfy the superego.
Wait, why not? If I resist the temptation, isn't that good?
Because the desire persists. The wish, the impulse, the thought, it's still there. And you can't hide that from your own internal superego. It knows your inner world.
Oh, so even if I successfully don't cheat or lie or lash out, the fact that I wanted to or even just thought about it still triggers guilt from the superego.
Exactly. You get punished internally just for the wish. So virtuous behavior doesn't bring psychic peace. Freud said we exchange the threat of external unhappiness, losing love, for an enduring inner unhappiness. This constant tension, this background hum of guilt generated by the superego's surveillance.
That's bleak. It makes being good feel like a punishment in itself sometimes.
That was his point. It's an economic disadvantage for the psyche, he called it. And he took it even further, linking this whole mechanism to the existence of civilization itself.
How does the superego relate to society?
Freud argued that for civilization to function, to get large groups of individuals to cohere and suppress their more aggressive or selfish drives, it needs to constantly reinforce this sense of guilt. The superego, first formed in relation to parents, gets scaled up and applied to the collective, to the law, to social norms.
So society basically cultivates our guilt to keep us in line.
That was Freud's controversial take. Civilization has to amplify guilt to manage the inherent conflict between our individualistic, aggressive drives, thanatos, he might say, and our need for connection and love, eros. It's the psychological cost of living together peacefully.
Wow. It suggests that a certain level of dissatisfaction and guilt isn't an accident of modern life, but maybe a structural requirement for society as we know it.
Heavy stuff, right? Okay, so we've painted a picture of, frankly, a lot of internal struggle dissonance, unhelpful habits, attachment wounds, this punishing superego. Given all that, how do we, the learners, the individuals trying to navigate this, actually gain some agency? We need a map for growth.
Yeah, so let's talk self-observation and transformation. How do we shift from just being pushed around by these forces to actually steering the ship?
The fundamental shift, according to many of these sources, is moving from being a passive reactor to becoming an active observer of your own internal world.
And a good starting point seems to be our core beliefs about ourselves, especially about potential and failure. Carol Dweck's work on mindset.
Absolutely. Dweck's research highlights how damaging the fixed mindset can be. This is the belief that your intelligence, your talents, are just fixed traits. You either have them or you don't.
So people with this mindset feel smart only when things are easy or when they succeed without much effort.
Right. And because failure is seen as revealing a fundamental lack, they avoid challenges. They fear looking dumb. It can lead to this kind of life paralysis where you miss opportunities because you're terrified of making mistakes.
Mistakes feel like a final verdict on your worth.
Exactly. Whereas the growth mindset sees abilities as things that can be developed through dedication and hard work. Challenges are opportunities to learn, effort is the path to mastery, and setbacks are just feedback.
Shifting to that growth mindset seems foundational. Okay, once we're open to learning and imperfection, how do we deal with those automatic negative interpretations that still pop up?
That's where cognitive techniques come in. Martin Seligman's ABC model is a really practical tool for this.
ABC. Okay, break that down.
It helps you dissect your reaction to adversity. A is the adversity, the actual objective event that happened.
Just the facts.
Just the facts. C is the consequence, the feeling or action that resulted from the event.
Well, how you felt what you did.
Right. But the crucial part, the intervention point, is B. That's the belief, your immediate, often automatic interpretation of A that caused C.
Okay, give me an example.
All right. Adversity A. Your boss sends you an email pointing out an error in your report. Consequence, C. You feel intense anxiety, maybe procrastinate on fixing it, feel like a failure all afternoon.
Okay, pretty common reaction.
The ABC model forces you to identify the belief, B, that connected A to C. Was the belief simply, I made an error and need to correct it? Probably not.
More likely something like, I'm incompetent, or my boss thinks I'm an idiot, or I'm going to lose my job.
Exactly. Those catastrophic beliefs are the B. And Seligman's point is that the adversity didn't directly cause the intense anxiety. The belief about the adversity did. By noticing and challenging that B, you can change the C. You gain control over your reaction.
That's powerful. Shifting the focus from the event to our interpretation of it. Okay, digging even deeper into our internal world, there's the internal family systems, IFS model. This sounds different. It talks about internal parts.
Yeah, IFS, developed by Richard Schwartz, offers this really compassionate and non-pathologizing way of understanding our psyche. It sees the mind not as a single entity, but as being naturally made up of various subpersonalities or parts.
Parts? Like what?
Well, there are common roles. Managers are parts that try to keep us safe and functional, often by controlling things the inner critic, the perfectionist, the planner.
Okay.
Then there are exiles. These are the young, vulnerable parts that hold the pain, fear, and shame from past experiences, often from childhood. Managers try to keep these exiles locked away so their pain doesn't overwhelm us.
And if the exile's pain does leak out?
That's when the firefighters jump in. These parts react impulsively and intensely to distract from or numb the exile's pain. Think binge eating, substance abuse, rage outbursts, dissociation. Their goal is immediate relief, but often with negative long-term consequences.
Wow, so it's like a whole internal ecosystem. What's the goal in IFS then? Get rid of the bad parts?
Not at all. That's key. The goal is self-leadership. IFS believes that underneath all these parts, everyone has a core self. This self isn't a part. It's the seat of consciousness, characterized by qualities like calm, curiosity, compassion, confidence, courage, creativity, clarity, and connectedness, the 8 C's.
So the aim is to access that core self.
Yes, and lead from that place. When the self is leading, you can approach your parts with curiosity and compassion, understand their positive intentions, even firefighters are trying to protect you, and heal the underlying wounds of the exiles.
So the parts don't disappear, they just relax, trust the self to handle things.
Exactly. They can let go of their extreme roles and find healthier ways to contribute. Managers can become good advisors. Firefighters can offer passion without distraction, and exiles can be unburdened and integrated. It's about internal harmony, not warfare.
That sounds like incredibly deep work and probably requires a lot of strength, especially when facing those painful exiled feelings or those really entrenched protective parts.
Absolutely. Which brings us to another crucial resource. Self-compassion, particularly as defined by Kristen Neff. She argues it's not weakness or self-pity. It's a vital source of strength and resilience for doing this kind of inner work.
How does she define it?
Fundamentally, it boils down to asking yourself, especially when you're suffering, what do I need right now? How can I meet my own suffering with kindness and support, rather than judgment or neglect?
And Neff talks about two different phases or types of self-compassion, right? It's not all soft and gentle.
Correct. There's tender self-compassion. This is the nurturing, comforting energy. It involves acknowledging our common humanity. Everyone suffers, everyone makes mistakes. Being kind to ourselves in the face of failure, and mindfully accepting our pain without being overwhelmed by it. It's the there energy.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the other phase?
Fierce self-compassion. This is the protective, provisioning, and motivating energy. It's about action,
Action like what?
like setting firm boundaries, saying no, protecting yourself from harm, standing up for your needs, motivating yourself to make changes. It's the energy that says this isn't okay, or I deserve better, or I need to do this difficult thing for my own well-being.
Like a protective parent energy, but directed inwards.
Exactly. Neff uses the mama bear analogy. But the key difference between fierce compassion and simple aggression is the intention.
How so?
Fierce compassion is motivated by the desire to alleviate suffering, your own or others. Aggression is often motivated by a desire to harm, dominate, or protect the ego. So, setting a boundary clearly and firmly to protect your energy. Fierce compassion, yelling at someone to make them feel small. Aggression, the intent matters.
So we need both. The tenderness to accept our flaws and soothe our pain, and the fierceness to protect ourselves and take necessary action.
Precisely. There are two sides of the same coin, both essential for navigating life's challenges and doing deep self-work.
Okay, so if we integrate all these tools, the growth mindset, the ABCs, leading from self and IFS, practicing both tender and fierce self-compassion, what kind of state are we aiming for? What does psychological integration actually feel like?
Well, one concept that comes up is optimal experience, or flow.
Ah, flow. Mihaly, Csikszentmihalyi's work. That state of being completely absorbed in an activity.
Exactly, where you're fully immersed, performing at your peak, action and awareness merge. Sense of time distorts and your sense of self kind of disappears because you're just in the activity. Effortless action, peak experience.
It sounds like the complete opposite of cognitive dissonance or neurotic inner conflict.
It really is. In flow, there's no split. Your skills perfectly match the challenge. Your intention and action are one. It's intrinsically rewarding.
And Csikszentmihalyi linked this state to finding meaning in life, didn't he?
He did. He suggested that finding activities that allow for flow and structuring your life around them is key. But also, on a bigger scale, meaning arises when your individual purpose feels connected to something larger, like contributing to a community or understanding the universal flow, seeing how things fit together.
So it's about moving beyond the small, conflicted self, beyond the superego's demands and the old patterns, and finding the sense of purpose and integration through engaging fully with complexity.
Beautifully put. It's like finding coherence not by simplifying things, but by mastering the complex interplay between yourself and the world, finding your place in that larger flow.
Okay, wow. That was quite a journey through the internal landscape. Let's try to synthesize this a bit.
Good idea.
We started with that fundamental discomfort of cognitive dissonance, how our need for consistency forces us into rationalization, selective seeking, even shaping our social circles.
Then we looked at where our behavioral patterns come from, the tension between Skinner's emphasis on environmental conditioning and punishment avoidance versus Jung's idea of innate archetypes structuring our psyche from birth.
We saw how these internal patterns, especially attachment wounds, get painfully replayed in relationships, like in the anxious avoidant trap.
Yeah, and we confronted Freud's superego, that internalized judge whose demand for perfection, even in thought, creates enduring guilt as the price of civilization.
But it wasn't all doom and gloom. We then gathered a toolkit for transformation, shifting to a growth mindset, using the ABC model to challenge negative interpretations.
Practicing self-leadership with our internal parts via IFS. And crucially, cultivating both tender and fierce self-compassion as the strength needed for this work.
Leading ultimately towards the possibility of flow and integration.
Right. Now, before we wrap up, there's one more concept from the sources that ties back really nicely to our starting point: dissonance, choice, and regret. It's Barry Schwartz's work on the cost of too many alternatives.
Ah, the paradox of choice. The idea that more choice isn't always better.
Exactly. Schwartz points out that while we think choice is freedom, the sheer volume of options we face in modern life, for everything from cereal to careers, actually increases our cognitive burden and, significantly, the potential for regret.
How does that link back to dissonance?
Because every option you don't choose has potentially attractive features. The more options there are, the more attractive features you inevitably reject. Each of those becomes a potential source of dissonance. Did I make the best possible choice?
It increases the opportunity costs we feel.
Massively.
Yeah.
And it makes us much more likely to engage in counterfactual thinking, the if-onlys. If only I'd picked that other film plan. If only I'd chosen that other university.
Even if the choice you made was perfectly good.
Even then, the awareness of all those other possibilities, some of which might have been slightly better in some specific way, amplifies potential regret and actually decreases your satisfaction with what you chose.
So the very abundance that's supposed to make us happy can actually lead to this chronic, low-grade dissatisfaction and second-guessing.
That's the paradox Schwartz identified. It makes achieving that stable psychological consonance Festinger talked about much harder in a world saturated with choice.
Okay, that's a really important modern context, which leads us perfectly into our final provocative thought for you, the listener. This one draws again from Jung's depth psychology.
Jung suggested that real deep transformation finding the self, that psychic totality, often doesn't come from the grand, obvious places we look. It emerges, he said, from something humble and forgotten. Indeed, from a wholly improbable source.
The treasure isn't always in the dragon's lair we expect. It might be hidden in the overlooked corner, the thing we dismiss.
That feeling you keep pushing away, that minor habit you ignore, that quiet shame, the pattern you just accept as the way I am. Jung believed these seemingly insignificant forgotten parts of ourselves often hold the key.
So the question for you to take away, considering all the automatic defenses, patterns, and coping mechanisms we've explored today, where is your attention usually directed? And what humble, forgotten, or maybe just unacknowledged pattern, feeling, or belief, if you turned your attention toward it with gentle observation?
Might hold the most potential for your next real transformation. It's often the quiet realization that begins the journey home.
Something profound to explore as you continue your own deep dive. Thanks for joining us today.